is there any measurement of the disadvantages for not having it, as a comparison?
Well, it's kind of the reverse side of the same coin, basically. If you don't have it, then it's very difficult to run a business these days. Let me take the tourism sector, because the tourism sector is particularly important in this city. And indeed, I was in Perth yesterday, and I was talking to the guy who runs the Crieff Hydro Hotel in Perthshire. And he was saying, you know, and his turnover in recent years has gone from £4 million a year to £18 million a year. And he actually already has fibre optic into the hotel and offers a free Wi-Fi service and free access to superfast broadband as part of the deal of staying in the hotel. And he was saying two things to me, and I'm getting the same message from B&Bs, bread and breakfast places, as I am from big hotels in Scotland, and that is these days it is very often difficult to get somebody to book into your hotel unless you have this service available. It is for a lot of people now, even if they're on their holidays and not on a business trip, even on their holidays, they want access to Wi-Fi and superfast broadband and to be able to use either the laptop or their tablet or whatever. And without that, they're not going to book into your hotel. The second thing is that they expect that now to be pretty free of charge. You know, I think the days are dying out when people will be prepared to pay an extra £50 for access to those kind of services or whatever used to be charged. They're expecting that now to be almost part of the deal. So when you book in, it's almost now an automatic assumption that you're going to have access to these services. And quite frankly, whether you're a small bed and breakfast or whether you're the Crieff Hydro or whether you're the Caledonian Hotel in Edinburgh, if you don't have access to these services, then quite frankly, it is going to very adversely affect your business. And that's a very good example of the downside of not having access to broadband, superfast broadband.
Fantastic, thank you. We have people watching this event on live stream, and also there's a lot of chat on Twitter. And there's a question for you from someone on Twitter who is Orkney ICT Forum, wants to know how can micro-local communities, for example, a small island, one island, Orkney, for example, how can they engage with the High Scotland investment process?
Well, in two ways. First of all, High have a rollout programme for the investment. One of the big problems throughout Scotland, particularly in the Highlands and Islands, is the backhaul facility, and a high priority for us will be to install the backhaul to make maximum use of sometimes facilities that are there. I referred to Neudart. Neudart actually has been led by a professor of informatics at Edinburgh University who happens to have a holiday cottage in Neudart, and he has installed superfast broadband piggybacking onto the university system that's already available and to other technologies, including radio technology. And so the first thing I would say to our tweeter from Orkney is look at the Neudart example, but secondly, we are sending aside initially £5 million of a seed fund, and that's deliberately to allow small communities who want to get together to do their own thing, maybe a bit faster than the national programme would roll out to get things started, and where they come forward with good proposals, we will be prepared to fund those proposals, and we'll be launching that fund next month. And I think that's a very exciting fund, because what we want to do and the way in which we're rolling this out is not for us, Big Brother in Edinburgh, to tell communities how it's going to be rolled out and what towns and villages are going to be the priority in their area. We are saying to people locally, you come forward with your plans. For example, one of the best set of plans for rolling out superfast broadband is in the Grampian region, where Aberdeen Council and Aberdeenshire Council together have come together and put a plan in place. So when they get their share of the national cake, they're going to follow that plan in terms of the rollout. And people now in Aberdeen know exactly who's going to get the broadband first in the Grampian area. And there are certain criteria like economic growth opportunities, areas of deprivation, not spots, and these are going to be the kind of priorities. So similarly, Orkney is part of the high plan, but if they want to do things locally, meantime, they'll be able to apply to the £5 million seed fund for local initiatives.
Thank you. We've time for one last quick question.
Sarah Skerritt from Rural Society Research at SAC. Out and about researching in rural communities, they feel that they're part of what's called the final third, and they're concerned that over the next 8 to 10 years they will remain the final third as the focus is on the 90% and then gradually up to the 100%. And by the time the investment reaches them, they'll be way behind again. So what strategically is the government planning to do to allay their fears in the final third areas?
Well, first of all, can I say right across Scotland, the technology is such that once it's installed, there's no reason why anybody needs to fall behind the rest of the country. You know, there are some fundamental principles we've adopted. One is open access. Another one is interoperability. Another one is that it's got to be technology neutral in the sense that you won't have to use a particular type of product to gain access to the network once it's installed. But I've given an absolute guarantee that the most remote areas, the island communities, the rural areas, are not going to be at the tail end of the queue. In fact, the investment I've announced this morning is almost entirely going to be devoted to rural Scotland and to small towns and villages. And I'll tell you why it would be wrong to put them at the end of the queue. Because in terms of the bang for the buck, putting it into these communities will have a proportionately far greater impact economically and socially on these communities than it will in upgrading some of the areas that are already reasonably well served. So in terms of making quick, fast returns on our investment, actually, these communities, many of them, will be at the top of the queue, certainly not at the end of the queue.
Brilliant.
Having said that, somebody has to be at the end of the queue.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Secretary, for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Sorry, I can't stay.